It's about 7:30. So welcome to our second Greenbelt Safe Greenbelt Zoom meeting. I think the first one went well and set us off. The purpose is the same as before. It's to raise awareness about the campaign, to invite donations, to encourage responses, and to have input to help prepare the planning case against Enfield Council. The difference this time is that then we were about 6 weeks away. Now we're 2 weeks away, which is a happy combination of providing an urgent call for action and still long enough to do that and to encourage lots of people to talk. So the difference this time is that apart from 2 weeks ago, so it's an urgent call to act on responses. You'll hear that the detailed planning work has progressed magnificently. There's no doubt quite a lot of work to do to actually bring it into place, but the building blocks are definitely there. The donations have gone very well. There were two levels for the donations that we were looking for. One was about £50,000 to make sure we covered the consultants that we would definitely had in mind to instruct, and the real fighting fund is up to 100,000. Because undoubtedly, as the campaign goes on, and it will not finish on the 13th of September, particularly with the Duchy of Lancaster and others, we will need to be continuing to prepare, particularly I think with a QC, but on several fronts we'll need more action. So what I can report very happily is that today we have reached £50,000, which I think is a magnificent community response. There have been a significant number of four-figure donations, which are very welcome indeed, originally led by the immediate neighbours, but at least matched by others around the community. So that shows the support, but with a lot of the 200s, 100s, 500s or whatever, which you throw around numbers, but each of them are important to be given. They're significant for everyone, and they're very, very much appreciated. We'll get on to about 6 or 7 times the call to action to put in more responses. But I remind you that our target is about 500 households, which is something near half of the households in Hadley Wood, and multiplying that up to 1,000, because we all have friends, neighbours. They don't have to live here, but there are a lot of people. If you're doing it yourself and then your wife or husband does it, that's 2. If your 2 children do it, that's 4. If their partners do it, that's 6. And if you've got others, you can easily get up to 10, and that can get us to that 1,000 figure, which looks a lot. As of today, they've been picking up fairly quickly since the Hadley Wood news came in. It was fairly slow before then. It's now about, well, it's over 150, and of those, that is over 100 households. Some have multiplied well, so there are some families and colleagues who have got up to about 10 in multiplying it. Most of them are in Hadley Wood. The others are all very welcome. But that needs to go up, and we need to see that really pushing ahead. And this meeting is very much a call to action to help. I'm going to repeat some of the things I said last time, because maybe not everyone was here before, and they're all just as relevant because our purposes are the same. So firstly, we advertise this as a public meeting, but it is actually a community meeting for association members, but for all residents and for friends of Hadley Wood, and that includes groups roundabout as well as friends and neighbours. The last time I said I really hope we'd have a proper meeting in person at the centre, or even in the open at Bartram's Lane, where we could look through the trees to the meadows that are under threat and that we really want to save. And I think we've said before that if you want to see them, and they are a little bit hidden, except from 2 great vantage points up on the top of the cycle path, looking down from Bartram's Lane, and from the judiciously pruned vegetation by the lay-by on Crescent West, where you see through to the horses, and a much loved stopping point for grandchildren being pushed around Hadley Wood. I've decided we need something more than just a preschool and play school for parents. We need actually a grandparent group to be looking after the little ones. There are quite a lot of people doing their loving duty, I think, on that count, and they do love the horses. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to go back to Rupert because we're going to say a bit more about the planning subcommittee and the tremendous work they've been doing. But Rupert, the overall leadership for this is the Hadley Wood Association. Could you just perhaps say a few words about the association for us?
Yes, sure, Robert. Thank you very much indeed. The Hadley Wood Association exists to make Hadley Wood a better place both to live and to work. And we're concerned for a number of different areas. For example, sound planning, improving the communication links within the community through things like the Hadley Wood News and through the internet and things like that. And also providing good sporting facilities. As you know, we've got about 27 acres and we have a tennis club on that land. We have a preschool. We have a bridge club that meets and also a dance group that uses the facilities. And also we have the playing fields, which is enjoyed by various local schools and also various football teams and things like that. In the past, there's been athletics sports days for Hadley Wood people and things like that. And inevitably people use the facilities for dog walking and general recreation, and to have a green area protected within the community of Hadley Wood is very important. We do pick up on planning issues through the forum and do be involved in the forum in terms of setting out a plan for Hadley Wood so that it gets developed in a likable and usable way that we all enjoy and appreciate. We also get involved in planning issues and particular campaigns. We can refer to Tree Grade, when the local railway company took down a number of trees and things like that. So this campaign, protecting our green belt, is very much at the heart of the Hadley Wood Association. We're very grateful to the committee for picking up on this particular issue, but we want to support it and provide the infrastructure, finance, etc., to help that committee achieve its aims and object to this planning application. So that's enough from me in terms of the Hadley Wood Association. I think that sort of covers most things you know about, but it would be great to have more and more members. And the best way to do that is to encourage your neighbours, your friends, to join the Hadley Wood Association. So do encourage membership. It doesn't cost very much, and it's a real worthwhile organisation to support the local community. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you very much, Rupert. A slightly hard sell on our membership because it does play an immediate role in relation to the response to the council and on other planning matters. If we have 700 members instead of 400, then that adds to our voice and is more convincing for them. And just to clarify, because there's amazing confusion amongst people who think that if they're a member of Hadley Wood Security, they're a member or Neighbourhood Watch, that they're a member of the association. The quick distinction is that we cost £50 a year for a couple. The Hadley Wood Security cost about 1,000, and Neighbourhood Watch is free. And the Neighbourhood Forum, which is going to have increasing importance in the next few months on the back of this campaign. Lakis may say a bit more about that, but we do need to boost the numbers in the Neighbourhood Forum and get on and support that draft plan, because that is one of the key ways we might actually make progress to defend our green belt. Right.
Robert, may I just interrupt at this point just to say that if you don't want to have your camera on, you can turn off your camera if you want to keep your privacy. But it's lovely to see all your faces, so I would keep them on. This is a real meeting, so it's nice to see everybody's faces. But somebody just asked, you know, why have we all got our cameras on? Well, it's purely a public meeting. You can do whatever you like in terms of having your cameras on or off. I'll just leave that with you. Thanks.
If you take a screenshot, this is the new type of works of art, so you never know how much it might be worth if you put it all together. Okay, what's all this about? Enfield Council are consulting on their second draft local plan, and it includes an option, a primary option, to take our Monkeymead Meadows out of Greenbelt and use it for development with 160 new housing units. So these are the three fields accessed through Crescent West Lay-by. And as I think we all feel, and it's being shown by the responses that I'm reading, they really are a vital part of our local character and the open fields up to Monkey Mead and to Hadley Highstone. Now, we actually have an opportunity to see it in a rather different way. And if we could now ask Bill, who very kindly and dramatically came to offer to do a video for us. Bill, would you like to introduce your work of art?
Thank you, Robert. I think it's overselling it slightly to say it's a work of art, but when John Leatherdale first approached me, and by chance, and then Robert again, I run a television company. I don't get involved in the filming usually myself, but it was an opportunity for me to contribute to the campaign to try and get as much response as quickly as possible by the 13th of September deadline. And what I was really impressed with when we did the filming process, which all took place last week, was the voice of the young people of Hadley Wood, who are astonished that our generation, not those represented here, but our generation are thinking of destroying the green lungs of the green belt. And that comes through, I think, really, really well in what they say. But without further ado, I will try and share, or Rupert, you can try and share in the first instance if you wish. If not, I will try and share the video and play it now. And if there are any questions immediately following, please say. Rupert, do you want to give it a go first? Yeah. I think we're missing the audio, which is what I feared.
These plans.
I find it incredible, having seen the year we've just had with all the flooding and environmental chaos. The UK hosting COP26, we're meant to be making things sustainable, yet we've decided to concrete over the green lungs that keep us safe. We're only going to have disaster in the future.
Removing the green belt would tear the heart out of the whole neighbourhood and irretrievably destroy the character of the protected heritage zones all around.
We have such a responsibility to protect and conserve the green belt that surrounds us today.
We just want to see Hadley Wood preserved as it is, as a green area, especially in Enfield where there aren't that many parks. All we ask is just to enjoy the fields and keep them protected. That's literally all we're asking for.
We've just gone through a really stressful time as a result of COVID, and people underestimate the importance of our local environment.
I know we need more affordable housing, but I do know that there is a much better way of doing this without destroying our green belt and adding to global warming.
Enfield Council published their Enfield Climate Action Plan in 2020, where they said they want to increase tree cover and green space by around 25%, and that the green belt would play an enhanced role in biodiversity and carbon offsetting.
This is the message that we want to hear, but actions speak louder than words. They should not be permanently destroying our green belts and covering it with new houses.
Before the Battle of Barnet in 1471, the Yorkist army marched through here in the night. Lancastrian cannonballs and arrows were fired, and an archaeological survey is needed to see if any of these still lie buried in these fields.
If you share these concerns, make sure they hear your voice. Please email Enfield Council at the address shown on the screen before the consultation deadline of Monday, 13th September. Let's protect and conserve our precious green belt.
Did that work?
Yes, we missed a bit of the start, but the gist was there. There is a link on the HWA website, I believe, to take you to the full quality version of that film. But I think the sentiment comes through, and I hope that it encourages as many people as possible to write in and to copy HWA with their response.
Bill, that's absolutely fantastic. I can't tell you how grateful we are. And as there are some other examples of your local work, I think up at Monk and Hadley Church. Would you just like to say a couple of words about that work you're doing there and the events?
Oh, you're very kind, Robert. Yes, thank you. We are restoring Church House, which are the Georgian buildings behind Mug and Hadley. And we've made a video, an appeal video for that as well. We're trying to raise £750,000 to restore those buildings as a community centre for Hadley and for Barnet. So yeah, we're working hard for that. All the details are on the church website, but bless you, Robert, for that plug.
How are you? It's very worthy and it shows your talent. You did that Sunday Lumia before that.
Oh, hello, make this louder.
And I think you actually have a Battle of Barnet event, which links very well with what John Leatherdale was saying at the end of the video.
We do indeed. Coming up on the weekend of the 11th of September, 11th and 12th of September at the church. Yeah.
Okay, so just before our deadline, the 30th, Monday the 13th. All right, well, thank you very much. So now we've got a very good visual of what we're talking about, and we've got the encouragement of knowing some of the strong views of the younger people, as well as some of the older campaigners, such as myself and the others who have done one or two of these by now. And I think a big idea of this is to push it through social media, which is completely beyond my ken, but we're trying to reach those teenagers and others. And it comes back to the point that responses can come from the whole family. Teenagers could put it in. They often have a refreshing and rather stronger view about these things than some of the others of us. All right, so back to the story. So this taking our meadows into development was not in the first draft local plan, and it's been put in now at the persistent request of the owner of Duchess of Lancaster, who presented it to council and to the council and said, please use it, because nobody looks at it and it's of no value and no interest and too near the station. So we have not paid much attention or been attacking Duchy of Lancaster now, because our focus is on getting out the responses to the council. But after that, we will certainly be paying attention to it. If they remove their site, they'd stop offering the site, then the plan falls, because Enfield will only have it in their plan if they've got an available and willing developer. So our campaign is to make sure they take it out again. The campaign slogan is save the green belt. We are concerned when we run these campaigns to make sure that we're not out of keeping with what the general will of the residents is. And there's always a concern that there may be some rather quiet minority or majority even that has a very different view. I can tell you from the responses that we've been seeing and a couple of more detailed checks I've made walking around and talking to a lot of people, that it's a very strong and common view about wanting to keep our green belt. Where there is concern, it's about, well, what's wrong with having homes? But then what sort of homes would they be? And maybe Lakis will say something about what those homes would look like and who they would be for. Right, well, I think at that point, apart from my, I think I explained before that there are three ways for us to win. We can win by getting Greenbelt taken completely out of the plan. We can win by having this special piece of Greenbelt with its unique characteristics and for only 160 people, housing units. We can win that way, and we can win by getting out the Duchy of Lancaster. But I think I'm now, if he's ready, hand over to Lakis to explain what the planning subcommittee have been doing for us.
Yes, thank you, Robert. I say thank you for everyone who's donated and responded today. It really is appreciated, because without those donations, we would not have been able to appoint all the professionals that we have. We've done a lot of work ourselves, but we do need it backed up by professional reports. And I'm pleased to say that we have got planning experts appointed. We've got heritage experts, landscape experts, sustainability experts. We've got a planning solicitor and a top QC, all sort of instructed and working on this objection on behalf of the community. What I'll quickly do is just run through some of our sort of key points where we think, you know, we've got a good argument to try and get the council to change their mind and take the site out of the local plan. It is only for 160 units. The council are saying they need 25,000 new homes between now and 2039. So as a sort of proportion, it is a very, very small proportion of the homes they need to find, or the homes they say they need to find. We're going to sort of dispute whether the 25,000 is the right figure, because the figure could be anything between 17,000 and 25,000, depending on how you do the assessment. There's also a new census about to be published, and that is sort of fairly critical as well in sort of getting to the housing numbers, because that will determine how big Enfield will be in 20 years' time, and hence determines how many homes they think they need to find. If I start with the Greenbelt, Council appointed their own consultants as part of the local plan work to produce a sort of a Greenbelt study. And what they did was they assessed all the Greenbelts around Enfield, and in particular on our site. For Greenbelt purposes, there are effectively 5 reasons as to why you should keep the Greenbelt. And what they did was looked at each of those reasons and tested them against our fields. And what they found was that 4 out of the 5 reasons, they thought that these fields make a very strong contribution for Greenbelt purposes. And that strong contribution is the highest possible ranking you can score. There's 5 ranking scores, and strongest was the highest. So at 4 out of 5, we score the highest. The only one they scored us down on was to do with neighbouring towns merging together. That's one of the purposes of the Greenbelt, and they only scored us as moderate on that ground, which is odd, because in their report they keep mentioning Potters Bar, but the fact we sit on the border with Barnet doesn't get a mention at all. So that's quite a low score, and we think that's wrong. That score should have been higher as well. Interestingly, what we also found is that the same consultants that Enfield used did the same study for London Borough Barnet back in 2018, when they were doing their local plan. And they assessed the Monk and Hadley Greenbelt, which is directly on the opposite side of the boundary with this site. And like our site, 4 out of the 5 reasons, again, they found it as strong contribution to the Greenbelt. And it was only on the same reason, which is the stopping neighbouring towns merging, that they again gave them a lower score, but they actually scored lower than we did. So in theory, on our site, they were sort of recommending ours can come out of the Greenbelt, whereas London Borough Barnet assessment they did had a lower scoring, and they weren't saying anything like that land should be developed on at all. So we'll play on that sort of consistency. The other thing they failed to mention is because this site sits right on the border, they've almost ignored what happens beyond the border. There's no sort of mention of actually the bit that's in Barnet is also Greenbelt, and the bit that borders us with Hertsmere is also Greenbelt. So they've taken like an arbitrary view that almost the world finishes at the end of their boundary, and they've just ignored whatever happens beyond that boundary, which again is wrong. Overall, in their assessment, they reckon, even the council's own consultants, there is between a high and a very high degree of harm by releasing the site from the Greenbelt. And for some reason, the council has decided almost to ignore that and just say, actually, we think it is appropriate, and we have demonstrated exceptional circumstances. They've done no such thing, apart from just writing words saying there are exceptional circumstances. They have not demonstrated why it needs to come out. So we'll have a section on our objection will be tackling the Greenbelt issues head on. The other heading of one of our objections is landscaping, because the actual fields form part of an area of special character. And the council actually adopted this area of special character within these fields back in 2013. They've done no further work to say, actually, we don't agree anymore. That area of special character runs beyond our boundary into Hertsmere and into Barnet. And Herts County Council have done an assessment, and they think it's a valuable and important landscape. Enfield characterisation study includes it as an area of special character. And when we did our neighbourhood plan work back in 2018, we did a sort of special report on the area and the character. And again, in that it mentions that this landscape is important. Council seem to have completely forgotten about it or just ignored it. And again, have done no assessment on any landscape harm that their proposed scheme would do. So we've got a specialist landscape consultant who's tackling that head on, and we'll hopefully have that report in this week. Just quickly going back to sort of housing numbers, because it is important. The housing numbers are effectively dictating everything the council have put in this plan. So what they're effectively saying is that we need to find enough land for 25,000 homes. We don't think we've got enough brownfield land, so we want to start allocating Greenbelt land. And that's their sort of main justification really for those 3 big sites coming out of the Greenbelt. What they forget to say is that they are the biggest landholder in the borough, being the council, and other than Meridian Water, they've excluded all their land holdings from this exercise on the basis they're not quite sure what they're going to need all their land for. That I think is a major flaw, because being the biggest landowner over a 20-year period, they are not going to need all their land interests for their current uses. There will be some of those sites that are brownfield sites that can come forward for development. The other thing they've done is excluded SIL sites. SIL, sorry, it's a bit of a planning term, is a sort of strategic industrial land. So strategic industrial land is sort of comes out of the London plan, and that is sort of vital and important industrial sites that the GLA don't really want to be developed on, because it sort of provides jobs and employment. But there are different types of SIL land. There are ones that are really underutilized or just used for open storage, and there are others that are far more important, have offices and warehouses, etc. The council took a decision right at the beginning of this exercise to exclude all of those SIL sites from the exercise. So not one house is being built on SIL land. The reality is, throughout London, you can build on SIL land, you can provide employment, and you can provide housing as part of mixed use development. So again, I think it's a major flaw. The council have just ignored that completely. The other fact that we found out, but just doing some research, is that there are 3,000 vacant properties in the London Borough of Enfield that are just not being used at all. Council have never been able to make any headway in trying to get those properties back into use. But 3,000 out of the 25,000, if they can get those 3,000 back into use over the planned period, that could effectively take out one of the big, large allocated sites, as well as our own site. Even if they only got 10% a year of those homes back, that's 300 homes per annum that could feed back in, and they wouldn't need our 160 homes on the Greenbelt. So again, we'll be making a play on that. Transport, I know it's a bit emotive, because as we all know, the Cockfosters Road is really, really busy now. If Chase Park does go ahead, there's 3,000 potential homes on there. It'll make it a lot worse. But in reality, I think anywhere in London is going to be busy. And so although we'll have a go at putting an objection against that, it probably is one of our sort of weaker objections. Heritage is another big one of our reasons as to what we're fighting it on, because obviously we know the site sits within the Hadley Wood Conservation Area. It also abuts the Monk and Hadley Conservation Area, but again, no mention of that conservation area in the local plan. Again, the council just almost seem to have ignored it completely. Again, it's one of those drop dead boundaries. They've not gone beyond the boundary or thought what could go beyond the boundary. The MPPF, which is sort of the National Planning Framework Guidelines, sets out what you have to do in terms of heritage assets. And the very first step is you have to identify all the heritage assets that might be affected. Council have identified the listed houses on Camlet Way. They've identified the conservation area in Hadley Wood, but they failed to identify the Monk and Hadley conservation area. So if you get the first step wrong, all the other steps that you go beyond that are going to be wrong by implication. We have appointed a heritage expert, and they have come up with a report. They've considered the listed buildings on Camlet Way and the 2 conservation areas, and their conclusion is that there is harm by the allocation. The degree of harm is to be assessed, but there will be harm to the listed buildings because of the setting of those listed buildings and the impact this scheme would have on the setting, and also on the impact on the setting of the conservation areas. Whilst some of our site just sits within the conservation area, which was extended back in 2013, the actual land in Monk and Hadley is all Greenbelt, and it's all within the conservation area, and it's all fields. So that again is quite an important factor to take into account, and the council have just completely ignored it. We have got a couple of what I would call sort of legal points or procedural points that we are seeking legal advice on, because having a neighbourhood planning forum set up and the council being fully aware of the planning forum, we should have been one of the parties they would have been consulting before the release of the local plan. Unfortunately, the council did not bother to inform us of any consultation before the issue of the local plan. It's made even worse because obviously they're aware of our draft neighbourhood plan, and our policies in relation to this field were that the greenbelt was to remain and it wasn't to be built on. The council were fully aware of that, but still chose to ignore it, chose not to consult us and to allocate it as a potential site. We also found out that there was a consultation exercise undertaken as part of the Greenbelt review. Again, we weren't informed as the planning forum, but if you read through their evidence base, they did approach all the other developers who are promoting the Greenbelt sites and other people as well for their comments and views. So we've asked our legal team as to whether that is sort of a serious error, whether it's just a small error, or whether, can it be rectified or not. Sustainability is also a big play for us, not only for the Greenbelt, but also for the other sort of policies that follow around the station. Because the council have got their intensification plan basically around the station. So what they're saying is, even though we've got a really low PTAL rating, and the PTAL rating varies from 1 to 6, 6 being the highest PTAL. So if you're in central London, you're probably PTAL 6. We are a PTAL 1, despite the fact that we've got a station and despite the fact that there is a bus stop directly outside the station. So public transport wise, we are really poorly located. The council have got a policy, which is also in the London plan, that says, actually, let's ignore these PTALs because there may be errors in them. If you've got a station, then as far as we're concerned, you can take a lot of development because you must be a sustainable location. That completely ignores the fact that our station sits right in the heart of the conservation area. If you get on the railway line, you either go north to Potters Bar, which is in Hartsmere, or you go south to New Barnet, which is in Barnet. There's no way of getting from Hadley Wood to Enfield Town or Cockfosters or any other of the shopping areas within the borough. So we've commissioned a special sustainability report that effectively is going to say to the council, even though we've got a station, and even though we've got one bus stop outside and we've got a few shops, this is not a sustainable location. Because if you want to go to the bank, you want to go to the GP, you want to go to a secondary school, you have to get in your car. There's no way you can go just purely by walk unless you're going to, you can walk for 45 minutes. So we've also commissioned a separate study, which is looking at the walkability around Hadley Wood. And what we've looked at is how far can you walk from the station and where do you get to? Because in reality, the 800-metre zone they're calling around the stations sounds great, but they do it as the crow flies, not as per the road networks and or the topography of the land, because obviously we are on a hill. And what we've proven by that exercise is that you cannot get anywhere outside Hadley Wood within 25 minutes. And if you really want to get to any of the services, it's probably a 45 minute walk for most people. Hadley Wood does have a lot of elderly people, so obviously the walking speeds are a lot slower. So again, by combining that report with our sustainability report, we really hope to prove to the council that their policy of being a station and having an intensification area around the station is nonsense, especially when it applies for us at Hadley Wood, because unfortunately, where we all live, if you haven't got a car, you can't really go anywhere. We have got sort of an objection on environmental grounds, although these aren't always as strong. The council have declared a climate emergency, as we all know. Difficult to know how building on a field that's been a field for hundreds of years really helps you with your climate change policies. That's one we'll be tackling, but there are other things like flood risk, you will be mentioning, wildlife habitats, butterflies, biodiversity. So there are a whole range of sort of environmental objections that we'll be submitting. They're not as strong as the other objections, but I think as a whole, they probably add weight by having them included. Moving on to sort of the neighbourhood plan, that once we've got this sort of consultation out of the way, it is vital that we do get back onto our neighbourhood plan, because I think there's a possibility of us getting the neighbourhood plan through the whole process and adopted before the council can come up with their next version of the local plan, which will be a Reg 19 version, probably sometime late summer next year. The reason it's important is that the neighbourhood plan will carry weight. And I'm hoping that if the council see that we are still pursuing the neighbourhood plan and we're still pursuing the fact that the site there has to remain within the green belt, they will really struggle to try and convince either their members that they should really carry on with it and include it, or worst case, an inspector who is independent and will be assessing this probably early 2024, something like that. So it is vital that we get on with our neighbourhood plan. We have got a very, very good draft, whereas at the moment it will need to be updated. So I'll be kind of calling on members of the planning forum late September onwards that we try and reform, get back together, get working on the document, get it back to the council, get it out to the community for consultation. Let's get it voted upon, and then let's get it adopted. Whilst I'm on, can I just say a very sort of a big thank you to the members of the planning subcommittee. They're putting in a huge amount of work. Steve DeVos has put in an unbelievable amount of work. He's primarily writing up our objection. Big thank you, Steve, really appreciated. Couldn't do it without you. Cindy Lee, Dawn Wellings, John Leatherdale, again, really, really digging deep, helping out on the communications and making sure everyone's aware, distributing leaflets, making the public aware. Again, Esther, Curlin, Desmond, Taljard, helping out, and Nick Coburn, again, all vital members of the committee, adding in comments. Really appreciate their hard work. Robert, as always involved, always pleased getting involved. And again, he does a huge amount of work, goes unrecognised. So a big thank you to Robert, and also to Katie and Bill for the video. They put it together really, really short notice. And it's such a professional job. I'm really, really pleased with it. So a big thank you to you two as well. That's probably it for me, Robert.
Well, I know you.
Sorry if I've gone on too long.
Absolutely not. I think it's the main content of the meeting. I think people are very interested to hear what you've been doing, not just spending the money, but leading and making all the effort. I completely heartily endorse all those thank yous you've made to the committee. And I think you're right to single out Steve, who I know does a fantastic amount of the detailed work. We must, of course, add your own leadership, and not just a standoff, but actually hands-on, really involved and leading it. So that's really helpful for us, and coming and explaining it to the meeting is also fantastic. You have highlighted the importance of the neighbourhood plan, and there are a number of ways in which Hadley Wood is very fortunate, not only in having a fantastic place to live, but in having some real volunteers who help to keep it that way and to embody the community spirit. And in relation to the neighbourhood plan, which you highlighted as going to be very important, I think we could recognise that Esther Curland, who's also on your committee, was the person with the foresight to bring that forward. And then David Harbert did a fantastic job to keep it alive, take it on, give it real body. And now we just need the third stage of driving it home, I think, with the community much more aware of its importance. So thanks to all of them. And perhaps to add that I think there are quite a few people in the community who know quite a lot about planning. We've got developers and planning lawyers and others, and they will all know that what you're doing is very much the tip of the iceberg. So it sounds very easy to say 800 meters isn't right and walkability, but getting all these overlapping policies, usually conflicting policies, many of which sound wonderful till they're applied, is really quite a big job. And I think that is fantastic. And you mentioned heritage, and I would just like to add that through John Leatherdale, we will be putting in a submission from the Hadley Wood Conservation Area Study Group, a rather arcane expression for our conservation area protection group, you might say, which has a formal status. But I keep hoping that this sort of exercise, showing how much people care about the history, how much the heritage experts reveal the history of it, will really produce a take-up in what's in effect our living history part of the community. Right, well, thank you very much. Now, time is moving on. There's another element of this, which is that whilst you have focused on Hadley Wood and saving our green belt, this is part of a wider consultation, which has also two or three other bits of green belt that are very important. And I know the work you're doing, say 3 out of the 6 strands actually strongly support what other groups are doing to defend their green belt on green belt housing need, transport some of these others. And there is, of course, the context of how the planning process works and who it is that we need to influence. So if I may, I have Councillor Georgiou with us, and as last time, I would just like him to sketch for us what the other groups are doing and how our efforts fit into that, and the general, in a neutral way, the general politics. And for that, I think some of you may have seen the BBC News today, where it was quite a high profile item, focused on Enfield and the Enfield plan, with our own tenant farmer, Robert Hayward, with a starring role, but also walk on paths for the mayor, for Better Homes for Enfield, for Boris digging around in some brownfield site, I think, doing something in a hard hat. Anyway, Alex, if you are around, could I call upon you to help us with your thoughts?
Sure. Thank you, Robert. And once again, thank you to you and the Hadley Wood Association for everything that you do. I mean, absolutely, as your 3 councillors, Elaine and Edward and I, we couldn't do it without you and the community. And I couldn't agree with any more than possible with what Lakis has said and what he's laid out in planning terms. So I won't dwell on that because he summarised it perfectly as far as I'm concerned. So in terms of other groups, and I see that someone's put it on the chat here, the main opponents of having any of the green belt within the draft local plan is Enfield Road Watch. They did an excellent job on the London road site previously, and they've done a brilliant job this time. I mean, I've had a leaflet, I live in Cockfosters, I've had a leaflet through my own door already. They're really pouring a lot of resource into this, both financial and in terms of people. Considering their last campaign ended quite a while ago, they've really managed to regroup pretty quickly to defend our green belt within Enfield, you know, referring obviously to the Cruise Hill inclusion, which is about 5,000 to 6,000 homes that are proposed, which would destroy about 7 to 8% of the borough's green belt, which will have a massive environmental impact. Another group is FERA, led by Peter Gibbs, and they are a group that definitely has I'd say quite an interesting and influential relationship within the council, and so they're pushing really hard. Better Homes for Enfield, as Robert's mentioned, are a brilliant group, and one of the issues that has been raised already on this call is affordable housing, and what they're pushing for is genuine affordable housing, which something, with the greatest respect, that's built in Hadley would not be genuine affordable housing, and a lot of what we're seeing across London and within Enfield isn't affordable housing. So for the council to be using that argument is completely misleading, and they know that, and we know that, and I'm sure the legal team knows that too. And the Enfield Society as well is very good at finding sites that can be built on that wouldn't impact our main towns and the green belt, and the council, it appears, have completely ignored them already. Now I'm going to be as brief as possible because I'd rather hear from residents and any questions that people have. But I've sort of been asked to talk about the political situation and the reality of where we are, and I really hope, and I'm sure someone will catch me out if anyone thinks I'm being partisan. That isn't my intention, so I'll just put that caveat there. I'm just stating the facts of where we are now. The council is absolutely correct when they say, the government is saying these are your targets. Now, I'm not going to debate whether they're high or low. That's just where we are. So the council has laid out a position. The council, the government has said, you need X amount every year. The Mayor of London has also set out that position. And for context, you know, we all know the government's Conservative. We have a Labour Enfield Council administration. And in terms of those opposing the draft local plan and the inclusion of the green belt are the Conservatives, of which I'm a part, and the independent group. Now, the caveat here is Theresa Villiers is a Conservative opposing, but thankfully we have Bambos Charalambos, who's our Labour MP, and the Labour Mayor of London has also come out very strongly against development on the green belt. And that's something that I really, of all parties and none, we've got a real mixed bag of groups and organisations across the spectrum that are opposing this draft local plan. So that's something that's completely of benefit to us to have cross-party support. So that's the situation. If anyone tells you otherwise, I mean, get them to come and talk to me, because that's about as neutral as I can put it about the situation that we're in. So with regard to what Robert said, with where to lobby, where to focus your efforts, that's exactly how I've laid it out and where we are. I hope it wasn't partisan. I'm just trying to state facts as best I can. Now, with regard to what's going on the rest of the ward, a lot of my time and effort, along with Clara, yes, including the Hadley Wood Association and other residents groups, have been focused on Cockfosters car park station and the proposals to build 351 flats within 4 very tall tower blocks. I won't use stronger language than that. We're in a polite audience here. Which would be taller than the existing Black Horse Tower. So that's where this part of the ward is focused at the moment, because where we are on the Greenbelt issue is we're still in the consultation stage. However, the most important thing I'd say to everyone, following on from what I said at our last meeting, is that just because the consultation stage is over, it doesn't mean you cannot continue to lobby senior politicians within the administration, continue to possibly speak to your members of parliament, whether it be Bambos or Theresa over the border in Barnet, the Mayor of London, or government officials. I would suggest that the Hadley Wood Association guides that in a way so we're not getting multiple different responses and a mixed message. So that'll be up to Robert Lakis and the rest of the team. But I think don't lose hope just because the consultation stage is over. There's a lot more work for people to do, and something this important, we shouldn't let it slip. So happy to take any questions, and thank you for the time, Robert.
Whoops, I'm just unmute. Alex, thank you very much. I think you kept that fairly neutral, and I think what it shows is there really is quite a mixed political message going on from the top through the different areas down. What is the reality for us, though, is that it is Enfield Council consulting on an Enfield plan. So at this moment, we're not dealing with an Act of Parliament, which may be equally relevant, or the national plan. We're facing a response to a draft local plan that did not have our green belt in and has put it in, and we want to take it out, and that's our focus. There were a couple of questions I just saw come up before I'm going to hand on to Liz, I hope. One was about putting up a list of objections. I think we've said earlier that the planning world and what has to be written is really rather complicated, and it's a bit of an art to distill it down to some key points that then get supported and put forward. And that's what Lakis and Steve and the others are doing in their multi-page submission with lots of appendices. What they've tried to do is distill that into a menu, a selection, ideas of maybe, I think it was originally 12. I think we've come down to 5 or 6. We change them occasionally as different ideas come in. So on the website, on the back of the leaflets, Paul, that's where you would see the list of objections for you to use, and use your own words and express your involvement in Hadley Wood. Definitely include your name and address. We've seen a few of those missing, but choose the ones that matter to you, put it in your own words, then they will count and they will support the submissions and get friends and relatives. It's a very simple thing. It said in Bill's video, what can I do? How can they hear my voice? You can send an email. It's a very simple thing to do. And we can do it, and lots of us can do it. Liz, if you're there, what I would like to do is ask you to neutralize, if anything needs neutralizing, on what Alex said on the political side, but otherwise you gave us a stirring call for action last time, and I think it needs to be repeated. It's now 2 weeks to go, and people really need to get moving, and if you've done it already yourself, get other people to do it. That's what we need. Liz.
Yeah, and it follows on exactly from what Alex has been saying, really. But I think also to reiterate the absolute thanks and gratitude of the Hadley Wood Association to the incredible group that have been driving and leading this at every single juncture. You've been there, and you've been incredible. But in sort of campaign and PR evidences, sometimes the easy bit of any campaign is to kickstart it, the so-called big bang, when you've got energy and you've got enthusiasm and everybody's on board. The far harder bit is to keep it going and to sustain it, and to make sure you can ramp it up at critical junctures and keep everybody on board. And that's far, far harder. And I think whilst it's absolutely critical that we bring in experts and we work with some key allies moving forward, the success of any local campaigns basically depends on the locals. And it's as simple as that. That is us. And there's a famous saying from the American civil rights movement, and that is, we are the people we're waiting for. Nobody else is going to rescue this for us. Nobody else is going to do it. It sits with us all on this screen tonight and our friends and neighbours across the whole of Hadley Wood to do this. So I think tonight is about seeing such fantastic numbers, to recommitting ourselves, to get more people involved, and to make sure that we can keep this campaign going right until the very end. And I hope the next film that Bill makes on our behalf is the story of how we won this campaign. But we will only have that film made by Bill if we all commit ourselves and we work together and we all play our part, no matter how small. Thank you.
I think we could have a moment's silence after that to let it sink in. I certainly don't want to add to it. So we've taken about an hour, but I think I hope it's been useful and important to tell you what we're doing, where we've got to. And I'm very heartened actually that on a detailed look, nearly all our arguments have turned out to be stronger, not weaker. No doubt one or two have fallen by the wayside, but that's left some pretty solid building blocks for our case. Now, I haven't really been following questions and answers. I could probably pick on one or two people that I know they have views about things, but what's on the screen, Rupert? Can you tell us what we can ask?
John put his hand up. John Leatherdale, were you wanting to say something? Were you wanting to say something? You're on silent, John. We can't hear you. There you go.
Okay.
That's it.
Good. Lakis has explained the enormous effort that's gone into protecting the Greenbelt, and this is obviously the priority. But there is another threat in the Enfield plan that's really the elephant in the room, and we ignore it at our peril. That is the threat to create an intensification building zone around Hadley Wood Station, 800 meters circle, which covers practically the whole of the built up area of Hadley Wood, other than the bottom of Lancaster and Beech Hill and Wagon. And it is probably the easiest thing to get removed, because it fails on 3 of the 4 criteria that the council put up themselves. The only criteria it matches is that we have a station. It ignores the lack of transport, the dependence on cars, the unsustainability. But the danger is, if this just goes through, buildings up to 4 floors can be built around, infill in gardens, pull down buildings and build much larger ones. And we have the other reason why this is an entirely unsuitable location is, of course, that the conservation area sits bang in the middle of this circle, which will give us some protection on the frontage to the roads, but not necessarily in the back gardens and so on. So if any of you haven't yet put in your comments, please look at the Hadley Wood News and think about this intensification. And if you've already put in your comments and haven't mentioned this threat, perhaps you'd like to put in another short note, because it's very easy to rebuff this threat. but if we don't do it, we could find it gets passed through by neglect. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That is, it is an important, a very important point. But Lakis, I hope you don't mind if I ask you to come back, because I think that there are. I'll let you answer first, and I may make a couple of comments because it's quite.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Don't worry, John. It is part of our objection because the whole basis of that policy is the station, and the whole basis of the station is sustainability. So we are going to be tackling how unsustainable the location it is, and that policy specifically for Hadley Wood as part of our main objection. So it will be within our main objection.
Yeah, I think we debated early on, we may even have talked about at the previous meeting about whether people can put in more than one response. And my understanding is that you can, as long as it's labeled differently for a different policy. So if you want to make an additional comment, don't call it SA 45
Correct.
Plot. I don't think we've given that indication in our guidance, but amongst the objections, I think it's right to say there are some sustainability objections. Like people have certainly been saying, and it's said on the video, the school is already full. You cannot get to places without using a car. I think quite a lot of objections have included that. So maybe a question of picking them up. But I think it's a very big plan, and there are 100 policies in it. Probably 50 are, mother's milk or something, and the others are all have a little bit of danger in them. And we are, I think, relying upon the PSC. And I know there's, I've seen a draft part of it dealing with all the other policies. We've just felt that if we go out to the whole community and ask them all to think about this and to write 100-page, submissions, it will get too complicated. And that the thing that was both simple and stir people up was the green belt. But intensification comes into the detailed way of attacking them. I hope that helps. But you're absolutely right, John. It's very important. Rupert, have we got another one?
I don't think there are. There's a few comments about writing to Prince Charles and he doesn't respond. Somebody asked, can we have access to the list of objections so we can reword them in our objections? And I think that the answer to that is it's on the website. Isn't that right, Lakis?
Yes, I think I answered that for Paul earlier, that we do have this slightly varying menu, but use your own words about what you care about. But the ones on the website are reflecting what the PSC think are the ones that relate to evidence coming from residents and useful for them to say.
Can I just add in something that there's a lot of people on the call, but when we talk to various people along the street and we just get chatting, a lot of people don't know how to object or haven't got email. So if there's anyone who doesn't know or wants some help with their objection, could I ask them to please contact Robert, and via the committee, we'll be happy to help you write an objection.
Yeah.
If that simplifies it.
Either email or letters. If you want to write a letter, there are different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
We recommend the email because for most people it's simple. You can copy the association straight away and it's done. All right, the Prince Charles and the Duchy of Lancaster, and again, Lakis, correct me if I'm wrong, but we definitely see having a go at, or inviting the Duchy of Lancaster to see the error of their ways and to withdraw it as an available site, which would kill this, is a really important part. It didn't have to be done by the 13th of September, and therefore we've put all the focus on that. We'll certainly be looking at it afterwards, and the QC's instructions will include how on earth do we make sure that they don't get anywhere. They're mixed in a whole mess of restrictive covenants, which they impose on all of us, but they don't seem to think that they apply to them. Well, we think they very probably do. And it was all part of their scheme of the building lease, which John Leatherdale has written such lectures about, that they deliberately kept these 3 meadows out of the building lease. It was always a part of the intention of this building area that these would remain as a rural adjunct to the conservation area, and it'd be quite wrong for the Duchy to do it. And of course, they have a lot of eco and other policies which may conflict with. So we're going to try and work out, as one of you said, or Alex said, to do it through the association, through the planning subcommittee. We want to work out what are the best ways to ask them to change in a polite way rather than have lots of different people writing. I think strictly Prince Charles will only be involved when he becomes the sovereign, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have an influence at the moment. Strictly it's the Queen. It's also the dancing Queen, sorry, the dancing minister from Aberdeen, Michael Gove, who is actually the Chancellor. For most purposes, it's a property company, but that doesn't mean we can't embarrass the owners into telling them to do something different. But we've certainly got ammunition. We'll certainly be developing it, and watch this space. And I think I asked in an early message, if you have any information about them, you have any thoughts about them, then let us know. We will feed them in and we'll happily involve you if you've got an active interest.
Just to say that the flyer that was sent around, sorry, I can't quite show it, but I think that's an excellent way to respond. This flyer that was put through the post box, and also has the details how to respond. It's really helpful. So if you are worried about that, do just try and find this flyer. It was sent to you, and the website also helps you just to fill it in, and then encourage members of your family to fill it in as well with their names and addresses.
Good. Well, we are actually at 8:30, so we don't have to go on till 9 o'clock just because we're all diligent Zoom listeners. So we could call it a day, but if there are some people who should wave hands or something so that Rupert can see if you want to go on, just while we're having a few seconds to do that, I'll just think if I'm seeing someone who I know ought to be saying a little bit more about them. I'll give one example, although she doesn't have to answer. I had a word with Jocelyn, who's one of our, Jocelyn Hobman, who's one of our active ramblers with local groups. I've seen objections coming in from people from Goffs Oak and elsewhere who walk through and enjoy the green space. People outside Hadley Wood do enjoy it as well. These are also people who can support our campaign. So if you have the Woodland Trust, whatever it might be, if you have connections with these organisations, these can also be recruited. And it doesn't take them long. They don't need 6 months to work out what to say. It's all pretty straightforward, and they can do it in a couple of days if they want to. Sorry to take your name in vain there, Jocelyn, but I know you're going to contact your old friends if you could. All right, I'm going to, it's not like an auction going, gone, but I'm proposing to close the meeting subject just to one last possibility of showing the video again as people either watch it and click out or whatever. Bill, is that possible to show it?
Yeah.
And then we'll finish on that. When that's finished, with the call to action, we'll close the meeting.
So Robert, you're not going to give us a rendition of Dancing Queen?
I think we'd all rather I didn't.
Right, shall I try and share this?
Yeah.
I'll try and share this.
Enfield Council plan to build 160 houses on greenbelt meadows beside Hadley Wood Conservation Area, causing irretrievable damage. At a time of climate change, we must protect and conserve our environment now and for future generations. Together, we must stop these plans.
I find it incredible, having seen the year we've just had with all the flooding and environmental chaos. The UK hosting COP26, we're meant to be making things sustainable, yet we've decided to concrete over the green lungs that keep us safe. We're only going to have disaster in the future.
Removing the green belt would tear the heart out of the whole neighbourhood and irretrievably destroy the character of the protected heritage zones all around.
We have such a responsibility to protect and conserve the green belt that surrounds us today.
We just want to see Hadley Wood preserved as it is, as a green area, especially in Enfield where there aren't that many parks. All we ask is just to enjoy the fields and keep them protected. That's literally all we're asking for.
We've just gone through a really stressful time as a result of COVID, and people underestimate the importance of our local environment.
I know we need more affordable housing, but I do know that there is a much better way of doing this without destroying our green belt and adding to global warming.
Enfield Council published their Enfield Climate Action Plan in 2020, where they said they want to increase tree cover and green space by around 25%, and that the green belt would play an enhanced role in biodiversity and carbon offsetting.
This is the message that we want to hear, but actions speak louder than words. They should not be permanently destroying our green belts and covering it with new houses.
Before the Battle of Barnet in 1471, the Yorkist army marched through here in the night. Lancastrian cannonballs and arrows were fired, and an archaeological survey is needed to see if any of these still lie buried in these fields.
If you share these concerns, make sure they hear your voice. Please email Enfield Council at the address shown on the screen before the consultation deadline of Monday, 13th September. Let's protect and conserve our precious green belt.